Trevor, nice to have you back on the show. BYU won by 17 in the Eastern time zone at Nippert Stadium. What was your biggest takeaway from the Cougars' 20-3 win?
Well, it was how tough they were. I mean, they played tough defense as they normally do. Jamal Williams at running back didn't have spectacular numbers, but he grounded out with about 24, 25 carries, almost 100 yards, just physical pounding, grind out the clock, old school football. And I thought that toughness was a great thing that stood out.
Okay, I just mentioned it, but BYU's offense continues to be kind of non-explosive, right? Is that okay at this point? It just is what it is after 9 games, or is there some level of frustration with them?
Well, there's a level of frustration, but that's different from assigning blame for it. Once again, we're looking at a offensive personnel group that was recruited to the go fast, go hard style of play. This offense gets their big plays in different ways, with decoding the defense and using pro-style route combinations in some ways, and so it takes time to adapt to that. It takes time to adapt the personnel and the mindset to that. The thing is, there was only one pass play over 12 yards in this game, and that was that flea flicker to Trinnaman. Other than that, they're just not connecting on those. But you know, it's the kind of thing that you can be frustrated by, but I wouldn't be mad at, because they are who they are, and they're finding ways to get the job done anyhow. And I think that's one thing that we'll see going forward now over these next couple of games, is maybe a little bit more work on the timing passing game against some opponents that they should be able to beat pretty handily, because they'll need to get better at that in order to win the bowl game.
So besides maybe the timing of passing, is there anywhere else specifically you feel like BYU needs to improve over the final 3 regular season games against inferior competition?
Well, I'd like to see tighter pass coverage. I'd like to see more guys get to the quarterback. I mean, Fred Warner and some of those guys are getting there when they're rushing, but they need to have a more consistent pass rush, I think. They're doing a good job of making the quarterback uncomfortable. Now let's finish it more. And then on the other side, protect the quarterback in the pocket better. They're doing a pretty good job of that in recent games, but they need to do better. And I think that ultimately it's a matter of the quarterback and receiver positions kind of taking the next step forward in the concept of pre-snap read, decode the defense, and figure out the disguise on the first second after the snap. And then by the time you finish your drop, you know where you're going with the ball. That's the kind of thing that they're not doing right now. And again, it's frustrating, but I'm not mad at them, because it's not what they're suited to do. It's not what they've practiced all their lives to do, and it's something that's new. And the fact that they are getting some good throws down the field from time to time is, I guess, where we have to hang our hat and say, okay, well, that's better than nothing, and let's accept what they are rather than be mad about what they're not.
At the beginning of the season, you always hope that a team improves week to week throughout. That's the goal. Where has this team improved, in your opinion, from week 1 to now here in week 10?
Well, you know, I think week 1 to week 10, they've been doing about the same things pretty well. I think the running game has done really well. I think special teams and kicking has done quite well. I think the secondary and the defense overall as ball hawking machines have done very well. And it's not like they weren't doing it well early and now they're doing it better. I think that's kind of what their strength has been. They've maintained those strengths and they've built on those strengths. The weaknesses have been ones that have been from the beginning as well, and they've really not shown tremendous improvement in those weaknesses, and that's what we talked about in terms of the passing game, the precision West Coast style passing game that they want to kind of filter into this thing. And so, you know, ultimately, the thing that I see now that is encouraging from what we saw from the beginning of the season is that through the struggles early in the season and the close losses early in the season, they've stayed together. The close losses have made them tighter as a unit. They have driven, I think, the coaches and the players together in a way that makes them even more of a team. You know, I think my impression of a team, I think, was personified in a baseball game, where the Florida Marlins, the Miami Marlins, were paying respect to a teammate that died in a boating accident. And before the next game that they played, they all walked out to the pitcher's mound, all in uniform. They all put their ball caps on the pitcher's mound. So the pitcher's mound was completely covered with Marlins ball caps. And they were together as one, and they were emotional. There were tears, and to me, that just embodied team, and it was adversity that really brought that out in them. This is not that kind of adversity that BYU has been dealing with. It's the adversity of close losses, which is nothing like life and death. But you see a similar response to that kind of adversity in driving them together. And ultimately, over the trajectory of the season, I see that as the most impressive and most important thing.
Trevor, I'm going to read off the 5 wins that BYU has, and I want you to tell me which is the most impressive to this point. Arizona, Toledo, Michigan State, Mississippi State, and now Cincinnati. What is BYU's best win thus far?
I think the most impressive was Arizona, just because that was an opener on the road with new systems on both sides. The defense really stepped up. The offense did what it had to do, in special teams, with a young kicker who had never kicked the ball before in his life at this level, kicks the game winner at the end. I mean, all of that put together, I think, set BYU up for a lot of positive things this year. Now, that's not their best opponent by far, but excuse me, but that was, to me, their most impressive win, just because of it occurred in the opener at a time when no one knew who BYU would be.
Each year, and this started in 2013 with the start of this show, we've received a certain line from you the week of an FCS opponent for BYU. So originally it was, don't sleep on Idaho State. Can we get a don't sleep on Southern Utah?
Don't sleep on Southern Utah. You happy about that? Is that good?
The first year, I think you were serious. Are you serious about Southern Utah? Don't sleep on them?
Yeah, well,
they're not North Dakota State,
the thing
Trevor.
about Southern Utah that you've got to watch for is that everybody that plays there wishes they would have played at BYU. So you've got this being their Super Bowl, and you do have to be careful that you don't go in flat. Now, having said that, BYU would have to be awfully flat in order to drop this game, and so I'm not terribly worried about it. To me, this is more of an opportunity to do some good things with the starters, get some good rhythm with the starters, and then develop some of the backup guys, because that's something BYU hasn't had many opportunities to do, because so many games have been within a field goal, right down to the wire. They haven't had a chance to develop some of the guys that are a relative drop-off to the guys in front of them, but that they will need either later in the season if there's an injury, or definitely next year. And so these next few games give them an opportunity to do that. Nothing against Southern Utah, but that's kind of what this game is set up to be.
Bronco Mendenhall was against running up a score, okay? Different coaches, different philosophies, right? Tanner Mangum's going to play in this game Saturday. Yet, what's your opinion on, can you pass the ball if you're up 50 in the third quarter? Do you wait until the fourth? Is it like 7 minutes left in the fourth? What's your philosophy on these kinds of games, and how long you should keep the pedal down?
My philosophy is both head coaches should meet at the middle of the field before the game. And Coach Satake should say to the Southern Utah coach, this is not personal, but we need to get Tanner Mangum some reps. We're going to throw the ball. We're going to keep throwing the ball. I'm not trying to run up the score on you guys, but you need to know that for the development of our program, this is really necessary for us. Sort of apologize in advance, and then put the hammer down and go, 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 go. Because Mangum had a lot of great throws last year, but this is his first year in this offense as well, and he's got not a single pass attempt this season. And so I think that this is an important game for him to get his feet wet and to get the timing down. Now, obviously, the competition isn't what it will be when they face FBS opponents over the last couple of weeks, and then the bowl game. But it's something that he needs. It's something that he needs not just for this year and possibly in the bowl game, but he needs it for next year too, because basically the BYU offensive staff doesn't know what they have in Tanner Mangum. They just don't know. They think they have an idea. They see him in practice in this system, but they don't know what he can do in a game. And so part of the issue is getting him reps. So part of the issue is for Ty Detmer and the offensive coaches to see what he does well, what he struggles with a little bit, what his strengths are that they can build on going into next season, and things that are very important from a standpoint of the coach's identification of a player's capabilities. So I think that's another reason why they need to throw the ball with Tanner.
It's another Matich Monday with ESPN's Trevor Matich talking about BYU and Southern Utah on Saturday afternoon, live on BYUtv at 3 Eastern. Trevor, when you look at what BYU can accomplish on Saturday, obviously the one that jumps off the page is, well, they can get to win number 6 and get bowl eligible. At this point, who do you want BYU to play in the Poinsettia Bowl? San Diego State, Wyoming, or Boise State are the three that look like will be the potential opponents.
Well, of those three, I'd rather BYU face Wyoming or San Diego State, because Boise is the hardest team for BYU to beat because of their balance on offense. They're able to throw the ball exceptionally well. They run the ball very well. I think San Diego State and Wyoming, especially Wyoming, are more based on the run. Wyoming especially is geared towards the run. Plus, Wyoming, from a defensive standpoint, I think is the most susceptible to BYU's running attack. So I think that the game that they're most likely to win, although certainly no guarantee, is Wyoming. My kind of emotional core wants Boise State to have a chance to avenge this 1-point loss earlier in the season. But if you look at it from just a cerebral standpoint, the game that they have the best chance to win from a matchup standpoint, that is Wyoming. Not because Wyoming isn't good. Wyoming beat Boise State, but it's because of the way the matchup sets up against BYU's strengths.
Hashtag safety dance. That's what I have to say about that. Okay, the new top 4 according to both the polls. Of course, the college football playoff poll coming out tomorrow night. Alabama, Michigan, Clemson, and Washington. Which of these teams won't be in the playoff, Trevor?
Washington, because Washington State's going to beat them in the Apple Cup and win the Pac-12.
You've said that for a couple weeks now.
Yes, I have, and I do believe that. That's nothing against Washington, by the way. I think Washington is fantastic. It's just that if you catch Washington State on a day when their offense is humming at home in Pullman, they're really hard to stop. Really hard to stop. So I see that as being the most likely. Now, Michigan, I think, is the most likely to give, and really to give the Big Ten 2 teams in the playoff, because if Michigan wins out except for a close game at Ohio State, if they lose that game at the end of the season but play very well, then Ohio State will go on to the Big Ten championship game. If they win that leaves Ohio State as the Big Ten champ playing well at the end of the season, and a Michigan team that has been dominant all year long who only lost 1 game, and that is on the road to a team that's playing really well at the end of the season. And if the Pac-12 does end up with a Washington or a Colorado as the conference champion, that gives the committee an excuse to look for a team that did not win their conference to put in. Now, Texas A&M in the initial ranking was number 4, and they were in position to be that first team that didn't win their own conference to make it into that 4th spot should there be other conference champions faltering. But they laid a gargantuan egg and got crushed by Mississippi State, the team that BYU handled pretty well. So they're out of it now. So really, Michigan, I think if they lose that game, don't count out them being in the playoff anyhow.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation as part of Matich Monday. Is anybody going to beat Alabama, Trevor?
Alabama is not unbeatable. I think LSU showed how you do it. They held Alabama to just 1 touchdown. It was just that their offense couldn't score, and that's sort of the formula this year. The formula is your defense has to hold the score way down, and then you've got to hope for a good bounce of the ball. You've got to hope for an Alabama defender to fall down on a pass play, something like that, in order for you to have a chance. Alabama's defense is reconfigured now from a couple of years ago. It used to be that the formula for beating them was shown by Ole Miss, where you have a mobile quarterback that can extend the play, that could also be accurate enough to throw to big receivers down the field who could win the ball in the air. That's how Mississippi State did it. That's how Clemson scored 40 points on them in the national championship game this last year. Well, the thing about Alabama's defense, though, is that they have fully come around to where they are now slightly smaller on their front 7. They are much faster on their front 7. So mobile quarterbacks have nowhere to run. They can close the distance and drag them down without having to worry about those big thumpers in there trying to lumber after a fast quarterback. That's in the past. Also, they have at least 3 linebackers and at least 3 defensive linemen who can individually defeat pass blockers to sack the quarterback. Behind, they play the most aggressive brand of cover 2 man, of pass coverage, of anybody in the nation, with some of the best athletes in the nation on defense. So defensively, good luck trying to move the ball against them without just a fortunate bounce of the ball once in a while. But their offense is where they're susceptible because Jalen Hurts is still a freshman, true freshman at quarterback, and you can slow them down on offense. But that is the formula. So who could beat them? Who's got the ability to do that? Michigan has a defense to be able to put a clamp on Alabama's offense. Ohio State has that kind of a defense. Clemson has that kind of a defense. So there are teams out there that can hold the score down, but then after you've held the score down with great defensive play, you still have to get lucky on special teams or offense to be able to beat them.
We have thrown everything at you, including the kitchen sink, Trevor, and you have knocked it out of the park once again. We appreciate the time, man.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.